President Harry S. Truman, was he a tortured soul? He was born in 1884 and he passed in 1972, and he came from very humble beginnings in Missouri. He worked as a bank clerk. He served in World War I in France, and he was well respected by those who served with him, which is a mark of the man. He entered the Senate as a Democrat in 1935. He brought in the Civil Aviation Act in 1938, and then he oversaw a massive reorganization of the railroads. In 1940, he led a big investigation into waste and fraud within the military, and thus streamlining them to make them have greater efficiency, should I say. So Franklin D. Roosevelt was the president at the time, and he chose Truman as his VP in 1944, that's his vice president. However, FDR died in office in 1945, which made Truman the 33rd president. But FDR had not kept Truman informed of what has been going on behind the scenes, and the biggest decisions that was already being tabled in secret meetings, and this was the Manhattan Project, the idea that they may have to use a nuclear bomb, the H-bomb. So Truman quite literally had a baptism of fire. And this man, this humble man, came from humble origins, had to make the biggest decision of his life. And I believe that that was the biggest decision that anybody has ever had to make in living history. It's the biggest decision that anybody has ever made within the history of the world. It was described as the most terrible bomb in the history of the world. So what were his options? His options at the time were to continue conventional bombing of Japanese cities, maybe to invade Japan, or to demonstrate the bomb on an unpopulated island, or finally drop the bomb on an inhabited city in Japan. Imagine that in somewhere like, I don't know, somewhere like Tepeka, or imagine it to be in San Francisco, or even in Vancouver. Unbelievable. Unimaginable. But despite their heavy losses at Okinawa and the firebombing of Tokyo, the threat didn't bother the Japanese. They refused to surrender. They had no idea what was coming, really. So they did. They dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. And the temperature near the blast site reached 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit. Contemporary descriptions of it described it as the sky. It seemed to explode. Birds ignited mid-air. Asphalt boiled. People over 2 miles away burst into crumbling cinders. 1 week later, on the 14th of August 1945, after the second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, the Japanese finally surrendered. World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history, with between 50 and 85 million fatalities was finally over. Now, Truman said, "I know that Japan is a terribly cruel and uncivilized nation in warfare, but I cannot bring myself to believe that because they are beasts, we should ourselves act in that same manner." So Truman, on reflection, years later, he said, he alone in all the world must say yes or no to that awesome, ultimate question: shall we drop the bomb on a living target? So my questions today are about President Truman's moral dilemma, not about hindsight judgment. It's no good us 70, 80 years later saying you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. It was a very different situation, and American servicemen were being decimated by the Japanese. So it was a completely different game. We cannot imagine it, we were not there. Okay, so with that, I'm going to focus the camera down on the table and we'll see how the pendulum goes. Okay, so we're going to be using Jupiter for this. There we go, that's Jupiter. Very, very, very pretty. I'll just put some more light on that for you so you get to see it properly. And I am using this really lovely, I don't know if you've seen this before, but this is snakeskin jasper. There we go, that's what snakeskin jasper looks like. It's fabulous. And some quartz. So we'll put the snakeskin jasper over here. Show you the quartz. That's pretty, isn't it? It's really lovely. You can't beat quartz for energy. All right, so I'll put that over there as well. And then we're going to get Jupiter. And let's do this read. All right, so what we're asking here, about Mr. Truman, and I just want to remind everybody that this is not about hindsight judgment. We're not judging him from today. This is really about his own moral dilemma. All right, so the first question I want to ask is, was the decision to drop the atomic bomb, was the decision Mr. Truman's alone? Did he make the decision on his own? And the answer is no. It's going north-south. So the answer is no, he did not. So was the decision to drop the atomic bomb, was it put to a blind vote? A bit like you do with a firing squad where nobody knows who's got the blank bullets. Was it put to a blind vote? We're asking Jupiter here. Was the decision put to a blind vote? No. Oh, okay. So everybody knew what everybody else had voted then. Was it just a visual show of hands in a room to decide to use this? Yes. For Jupiter here, side to side, that is a yes. Okay. So, did President Truman have any conversation with his source, with his God, before making this decision? Did he speak or pray or ask for guidance regarding this decision with his source? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. That makes sense, doesn't it? It really does. Okay. Sorry, I've just had to adjust the camera because it's quite uncomfortable in the position that it was in. Okay. So did President Truman, did he know the impact that this bomb would have on the human body? Did President Truman know that the impact this would have on the human body? And that's a yes. So they must have tested it out on animals and things. Okay, thank you for that. Was there any awareness about the legacy that would be left in the ground by the nuclear reaction? Did they realize that the ground would be contaminated for 100 years? Yes, they did. Okay. So the decision to use the atomic bomb, did it bother President Truman for the rest of his natural life? Did the decision to use that atomic bomb bother President Truman for the rest of his natural life? Yes, it did. That's very understandable, isn't it? Of course it would. Wow, that's really massive. Look at the way that is reacting. It absolutely did. Okay, thank you. Was President Truman ostracized by any of his family for dropping the atomic bomb on Japan in 1945? Did any of his family, once they realized what the consequences were, did any of his family ostracize him? Very clearly there, that was a no. They stood by him. They totally agreed with it. And that was a consensus of the day, especially once people started to see the poor souls coming out of Changi and other prisoner of war camps. Okay. Did President Truman's mother, she was still alive, did she feel any anger towards Truman after the film was released of the after effects of the atomic bomb? Did she look at him differently in any way? No. No. No, she didn't. He was still her son. Okay. Thank you for that. But a similar question. Did Mrs. Truman, did President Truman's mother, did she fear what was coming for her son in the afterlife? In other words, did she fear the Reaper? Did she fear what her son would have to answer for in the afterlife because of the effects of the atomic bomb? Did she fear the Reaper for her son? Did President Truman's mother fear the Reaper for her son? Did she worry what he would have to answer to in the afterlife? Yeah, she did. She absolutely did. Okay, thank you. Did President Truman, did he ever ask for forgiveness from the universe, from spirit, from source? Did President Truman ever ask for forgiveness for having to make such a difficult decision in his life? Did he ever ask for forgiveness? Did President Truman ever ask for forgiveness for having to make this horrendous decision in his life? Yes, he did. He did. Wow. What a tremendous decision to have to make. Okay. So, subsequent actions in policy, were they ever coloured by his decision to use the atomic bomb? Did it affect his future government or the remaining time in office that he had? Did it affect him? Did it change how his policy was? Government policy was? It did. I think it did. Looking like it's an east-west. For the use of the atomic bomb affected what he did in future years within office. Wow. Okay, thank you for that. All right. Now, so his choice not to use a hydrogen bomb, now this is not an atomic bomb, it's much worse. The choice not to use a hydrogen bomb in Korea in 1952, was it because he did not feel the Korean War justified it? Did he feel that the Korean War did not justify the use of an H-bomb? Hydrogen bomb, and he's saying yes. It's yes to that. So as a follow-on from that, was that because of the destruction to the human souls? Was it because of the destruction to the human life that he'd witnessed in Nagasaki? Was that what changed his mind about using the H-bomb in Korea? Because it would have finished Korean War pretty quickly. Yeah, he saw what it'd done, and I guess the answer was never again. There we go, that's a yes for that. Okay, just two more questions. Was President Truman, was he appalled by the consequences of the destruction in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Did it absolutely appall him? Did it appall him? So it's anti-clockwise, which means maybe it did. He knew he had to do it. That's what they'd all voted to do. But maybe privately it absolutely appalled him. Okay. Last question about President Truman. Did President Truman ever go to Nagasaki or Hiroshima secretly after he left office? Did President Truman ever go to Nagasaki or Hiroshima secretly after he left office, after he had left being president? Look at that. Look at that. That's a yes. I'm going to ask another question as a follow-on from that. When he went to visit Nagasaki or Hiroshima, did he do it incognito? Did he visit incognito as a tourist, say? Did he visit incognito as a tourist? He did. He would have to. But he did. Okay. Did President Truman's wife know he was going to make a secret visit to Hiroshima or Nagasaki? Did she know about this? No. No, she didn't. God. Wow. Kept it from his wife. Okay. Let's ask another question. Did he ever admit to his wife that he had been to Hiroshima or Nagasaki? Did Truman ever admit to his wife that he had been to Hiroshima or Nagasaki? It's a bit of a big secret to keep, isn't it? Yes, he did. Look at that, he did. He did tell her. So he obviously went off and did it without saying anything, and then came back and told her. Wow. Oh my word. That's powerful, isn't it? This man had the biggest decision to make. Absolutely. And wow. It's almost impossible to imagine. And that was Jupiter. And we were reading there about President Truman. And something that I'm really interested in is moral dilemmas. You know, nobody on this earth has ever had such a big decision to make before. That was massive. Okay.